The movie begins with a young, attractive woman named Lee Holloway, working in an office while having both of her hands restrained by a rod. She does all of her office work with her mouth. The scene then shifts to 6 months earlier. When Lee is released from a mental institution, her mother picks her up from there. Today is her sister's wedding. But rather than enjoying it, she stands in a corner and observes everything with murmuring eyes. Peter, her boyfriend, then comes up to her and asks her to dance. She starts dancing with him and has now started taking pleasure in the ceremony. After watching her happiness, her father approaches her and cuddles her while expressing his desire to see her always in this state. Lee has an odd feeling while dancing and storms back to her room in a huff under her bed's mattress. She pulls out a box and opens it. The box contains a knife, some darts, and other sharp objects. She takes a sharp object out of the box and starts cutting herself. She actually suffers from a mental disorder and abuses herself whenever she experiences an unusual emotion or witnesses a tragic event. The following day, she watches her parents fighting and bickering for an unknown reason, which makes her depressed and leads her to hurt herself with a heated element. Whenever she witnesses her parents arguing, she consistently becomes depressed and harms herself. Her parents are so concerned for her that they have hidden everything Lee could possibly use to hurt herself, but they are not aware that she has a box full of tools she can use to hurt herself. Lee decides to attempt suicide one day while swimming in a pool, but is saved. Her mother is now very concerned for her, but refrains from debating with her because she knows it will only make matters worse. Lee was admitted to a mental facility for rehabilitation, but it didn't work. Knowing that her parents are worried for her, Lee decides to look for a remedy to her issue. Instead of staying at home and witnessing her parents argue, she chooses to focus on a job of some sort. He begins taking typing lessons from a school and quickly masters the skill. After becoming proficient in typing, she starts looking for job vacancies and discovers a secretary job ad in a newspaper. Lee and her mother travel to the given address for the interview. It's a messy house. She walks into the house and sees the old secretary leaving with tears in her eyes and some wounds visible on her body while she goes inside for the interview. Lee's mom stays outside. There she meets Mr. Gray, the boss who has placed an ad for a secretary. He questions her on her experience and asks some standard interview questions. Gray then orders her to make him a cup of coffee. To make coffee, Lee goes to the kitchen. When she starts making coffee, she realizes that the water bottle is empty and that she needs to replace it. Instead of calling Gray to replace it, she does it herself, making her clothes wet in the process. Gray hires her as his new secretary. After recognizing her intentions, Lee is overjoyed to have gotten this job, as is her mother, because it will keep her busy in the office. Lee has now officially joined the office to try her patience. Gray always assigns her challenging tasks. Gray assigns her some improper tasks, in addition to typing work, which she completes without complaint. One day he binds Lee's hands with a rod and orders her to do all of her office work with bound hands, and this is where the story returns to the present. A few days later, Gray tells Lee that he accidentally threw away an important file in a garbage trunk and gives her the task of retrieving it for him. She does this and eventually locates that file in the trash bin. After some searching, then she brings a file to Gray. Instead of expressing gratitude to her, he shows him a duplicate file and claims he no longer needs it, constantly critiques her work, and yells at her when she makes a mistake. Gray has noticed Lee's wounds and is curious about them. In the evening, Peter invites Lee to dinner at a restaurant. He proposes marriage to her, but she refuses, claiming she is not ready. One day while on call, Lee speaks politely, which Gray notices and yells at her for being so polite with clients. He tries to teach her how to talk to clients on the phone, but she can't mimic his voice volume. Gray is attracted to Lee, but his attitude as a rude boss never praises her and always yells at her for mistakes. The following day, Lee makes another mistake, but this one is a typing error rather than a minor one. Gray starts shouting at her and tells her that he will give her punishment for her misconduct this time. He commands her to bend over a table. She does the same, and as punishment, he smacks her hard on the hips. This punishment pales in comparison to the harm she causes herself. Even these smacks seduce her for Gray, and she enjoys it. She is now drawn to Gray. She intentionally makes mistakes just to get Gray's hire. He also enjoys punishing her because it gives a mental relief, so he punishes her in various ways. Lee is completely in love with Gray at this point, and whenever she wants to be punished, or more accurately, whenever she desires to enjoy Gray's company, she makes mistakes. She likes how Gray treats her and wants her boyfriend Peter to do the same, but he can't beat her, so he denies treating her that way. The following day at work, Lee intentionally makes typing errors once more. When Gray notices the mistakes, he summons Lee into his office. There he gives her the order to bend over the table. She does so gladly, but this time, instead of slamming on her hips, Gray begins to intimate with her in that position. Gray then feels bad about what he has done, while Lee ejaculates in the bathroom thinking about Gray. Gray then fires Lee from his job. She tries to persuade him that she enjoys working here and is willing to accept any punishment, but he orders him to leave. Lee, who is in love with Gray, slaps him across the face and then walks out shedding tears with her belongings. She attempts to work for numerous businesses, but finds no mental satisfaction there, so she returns. To harming herself, her parents decide to get her married to Peter, to stop her from doing that on the day of the wedding. Lee realizes how much she adores Gray, and she dashes out to his office in a bridal gown. There she asks Gray to marry her, but he declines, claiming he does not love her. She then takes a seat on his chair and threatens to stay in his office until he marries her. Due to her actions, Gray punishes her by ordering her to place her hands on the table and remain still until he commands her to move. She does the same while Gray secretly calls Peter to persuade her. Peter arrives there and attempts to persuade her that he loves her more than anyone else and wants to wed her, but she simply rejects him, so he leaves. Then her mother arrives with food and offers her some, but since she is still awaiting Gray's order, she declines to eat, so her mother leaves unsuccessful. She is approached by her neighbors, co-workers, and other people who try to convince her, but she refuses to budge and waits for Gray to give the order. Lee has been waiting for Gray's order for the past 3 days without moving her hands and without even using the bathroom. Everyone is concerned for her, and the media arrives to cover this romantic drama. Gray approaches her when she finally swoons from hunger and exhaustion. Her hands are still in the position he told her to be in when Gray tries to drink her flavored milk. Her eyes start to open. He then carries her to the bathroom where he gives her a bath. While they engage in sexual contact once more, after some days they both get married to each other. Gray intimates with her in different positions while punishing her, and this is where the film ends. For more movie recaps, please subscribe to Simply Recap. Cheers!